Butterworth's in for you this evening. And it looks like they are ready to go to get started on your live reading for you. So I'm going to hand them on over to the two of them, and they're going to get started on your live reading for you.
Thanks, Emily. This is Connie, and I have the Omaha World Herald pulled up this evening. Let's start in Baghdad. The UN Children's Fund Wednesday issued a stark warning to Iraqi troops and Islamic State militants in the battle for Fallujah to spare the children, the most vulnerable among the tens of thousands of civilians who remain trapped by the fighting for control of this city west of Baghdad. Backed by aerial support from the U.S.-led coalition and paramilitary forces, mainly made up of Shiite militias, Iraqi government troops more than a week ago launched a military operation to recapture Fallujah, which had been under the control of the extremist group for more than 2 years. As the battle unfolded, with Iraqi forces this week pushing into the city's southern sections after securing surrounding towns and villages, more than 50,000 people are believed to be trapped inside the Sunni-majority city, about 40 miles west of Baghdad. The UNICEF estimated the number of the children trapped with their families inside the city at about 20,000, warning they face a dire humanitarian situation in addition to the risk of forced recruitment into the fighting by the IS militants. Children who are forcibly recruited into the fighting see their lives and futures jeopardized as they are forced to carry and use arms fighting an adults' war, the organization said in a statement. It called on all parties to protect children inside Fallujah and provide safe passage to those wishing to leave the city. Fallujah was the first large city in Iraq to fall to IS, and it is the last major urban area controlled by the extremist group in western Iraq. The Sunni-led militants still control the country's second largest city, Mosul, in the north, as well as smaller towns and patches of territory in the country's west and north. The fight for Fallujah is expected to be protracted because the Islamic State group has had more than 2 years to dig in. Hidden bombs are believed to be strewn throughout the city, and the presence of trapped civilians will limit the use of supporting airstrikes.
Okay, New York Times on the front page, in blunt testimony revealed on Tuesday, former managers of Trump University, the for-profit school started by Donald Trump, portrayed it as an unscrupulous business that relied on high-pressure sales tactics, employed unqualified instructors, made deceptive claims, and exploited vulnerable students willing to pay tens of thousands of dollars for Trump's insights. One sales manager for Trump University, Ronald Snackenberg, recounted how he was reprimanded for not pushing a financially struggling couple hard enough to sign up for a $35,000 real estate class, despite his conclusion that it would endanger their economic future. He watched with disgust, he says, as a fellow Trump University salesman persuaded the couple to purchase the class anyway. I believe Trump University was a fraudulent scheme, Snackenberg wrote in his testimony, and it preyed upon the elderly and uneducated to separate them from their money. For Trump, whose presidential campaign hinges on his reputation as a businessman, the newly unsealed documents offer an unflattering snapshot of his career since branching out over the past decade from building skyscrapers into endeavors that cashed in on his name to sell everything from water and steaks to ties and education. The release of the documents on Tuesday under court order was the latest turn in a federal lawsuit filed in California by dissatisfied former Trump University students, and it's bedeviled the businessman since 2010 and can trail him into the White House if he's elected president. Trump started the university in 2005. Excuse me, he owned 93% of the now defunct company. From the start, he acted as its chief promoter rather than day-to-day manager, selling it as a tool of financial empowerment that would improve the life for thousands of ordinary Americans. It would, he said, teach you better than the best business school, according to the transcript of a web video. Within the documents made public Tuesday were internal employee guides encouraging customers with little money to pay for the tuition with their credit cards. We teach the technique of using OPM, other people's money, explained the internal instructions for salespeople. The documents pushed employees to exploit the emotions of potential customers. Let them know you found an answer to their problems, read confidential instructions to salespeople. The most striking documents were written testimony from former employees of Trump University who said they became disenchanted with the university's tactics and culture. Corrine Summer, an event manager, recounts how colleagues encouraged students to open up as many credit cards as possible to pay for classes that many of them could not afford. So, with Trump getting the nomination, we're going to hear him. That a lot of this has been held back, I'm sure, till now. So it's going to get real for him.
Sure, you're right.
Should be interesting.
Yeah. Are you planning to watch the Olympics?
Yeah.
Here's a story for you. This one sounds very interesting. For the first time, one of the teams competing in the Olympic Games will be made up of refugees who hail from different countries they no longer call home.
Oh.
Popo Masenga and Yolanda Mabika, both judo athletes from Congo, are two of those competing for spots on the refugee squad. They say the chance to be part of history feels like a form of vindication, a collective recognition of both the suffering and aspirations of refugees everywhere. For me, this is incredible because a refugee has never participated in the Olympics before, said Masenga, 24. The whole world will be watching. This week, the two hopefuls will find out whether they made the cut. The International Olympic Committee is expected to name members of the Refugee Olympic Committee, or a team rather, on Friday. Officials say they've identified 43 athletes who could potentially qualify for the Games, but that the final refugee team will only have 5 to 10 members. The team will compete under the Olympic flag instead of any one country. And getting to the point of possibly competing in the Summer Games this August in Rio de Janeiro has been a long road. Both Masenga and Mabika fled their war-torn homes as children. Civil strife in the Central African nation has caused the deaths of several million people since the mid-90s. Eventually, the two became part of Congo's National Judo Federation, but they say training was harsh and a failure to win medals in competition meant punishments, including stints inside a cell with little food or water for 3 days. In 2013, the two traveled to Brazil with the team to compete at the World Judo Championships. They say that in Rio, team officials treated them as harshly as they had at home. They claim officials left them at their downtown Rio hotel for 3 days prior to the competition without food, money, or passports. A few days before our fight, I was very, very hungry. I almost died, said Mabika, who's 28. Mabika decided to leave the hotel and roamed around the busy streets of Rio looking for food and help. That venture out led Mabika and Masenga to apply for asylum in Brazil, which granted them refugee status. Emails to Congo's Judo Federation seeking comment on the athletes' accusations were not returned. With the help of the Riaco charity, Masenga and Mabika have daily judo classes and do cross-training just like Brazilian athletes preparing for the Olympics. They train with Geraldo Bernardes, who has led the Brazilian national team to 4 Olympics.
International news from the New York Times. This was updated this afternoon. A French naval vessel fitted with sophisticated underwater sensors has picked up a signal believed to have emanated from one of the 2 data recorders on Egypt Air Flight 804, Egyptian and French officials said on Wednesday. The flight crashed into the Mediterranean Sea on May 19th while en route to Cairo from Paris, killing all 66 people on board. Data signals and the discovery of wreckage and human remains have suggested a rapid loss of control just before the crash. But the cause of the disaster remains a mystery. No terrorist group has claimed responsibility, though the Egyptian aviation minister, Sharif Fathi, said that terrorism is a more likely cause for the crash than a technical failure. The flight recorders will be critical for determining whether the crash was the result of a deliberate act or an accident. The vessel that picked up the signal, the survey ship Laplace, has been taking part in the search for the data recorders from the Airbus A320 since last week. On Wednesday, it received through its search equipment signals from the seabed of the wreckage search area. This is quoting a statement from the Egyptian Aircraft Accident Investigation Committee, which is leading the inquiry. The signals are, quoting now, assumed to be from one of the data recorders, end quote. A few hours later, the French military's high command said on Twitter, the search vessel Laplace has detected a beacon from one flight recorder. The detection of the signal was also confirmed by Sebastien Barthet, a spokesman for the French agency that investigates aviation accidents, which is cooperating with Egyptian officials on the inquiry. Another search vessel, the John Lethbridge, is being prepared to join the search team within a week to retrieve the recorders if they are found, officials said. The vessel is operated by Deep Open Search, a company based in, so I can't pronounce, somewhere in France. Sorry, Mauritius, is that good enough?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. The search for the Egypt airplane has narrowed to an area within 3-mile radius of the point in the Mediterranean where satellite data indicate the plane probably went down. The area is about 180 miles north of the Egyptian coast. And the article goes on to say, I don't believe anybody's claimed responsibility for this. So this is why they're kind of scratching their heads as to what happened and want to get to those black boxes. So
Craziness. All right. Speaking of, in LA, 2 people were shot and killed on the UCLA campus Wednesday morning, according to a Los Angeles Police Department spokesman. A UCLA police spokesman said it was possible that one of the 2 people killed in the campus shooting was the gunman. The campus on the city's west side was locked down, and officers with the LAPD and the university's police force were running across the campus, some with weapons drawn. At one point, a team in tactical gear stormed into a building, and more than a dozen police cars massed near Bolter Hall, an engineering building. People emerged from the buildings with their hands raised or behind their heads. Police told people to stay away from the campus and the bustling part of the city. 2 people were confirmed dead. LAPD officer Aaron Jefferson told the Associated Press. Campus Media Relations Officer Rebecca Kendall said she did not know the whereabouts of the shooter. The shooting occurred the week before final exams at the school, the flagship of the University of California system, with about 43,000 students. Many students posted to social media, many to let friends and family know they were safe. Some described frantic evacuation scenes, and a large police response. Others wrote of sitting in a darkened room after barricading doors. The focus of police activity was a cluster of engineering buildings near the center of campus that occupies 419 acres in LA. Bioengineering professor Denise Aberle said she could see a lot of police activity in a police helicopter hovering over the engineering building. Police just keep coming, she said.
From the New York Times, after Friday prayer, and this is Dateline, Oakland, California, after Friday prayer at the Oakland Islamic Center, Mamoun Kund, a 51-year-old Sudanese American, sat at a table and did something he had not done in 11 years. He's been a citizen. He registered to vote. Until recently, he had no interest, he said, but now I hear talk about Muslims, Hispanics, and women. Doesn't make sense, he added. Americans aren't like that. Upstairs in the area for women, Diana Agag, who wore a bright red headscarf, picked up voter registration forms for herself and 5 members of her family. As she did, a friend whispered, "This is the most important vote in our life." These are unsettling times for many American Muslims. People are losing their sleep, said Naeem Bayag, the president of the Islamic Circle of North America. The political environment is creating a divide in America by race, language, gender, and religion. But it's also had an unintended consequence, galvanizing Muslims to vote. In late November, after the terrorist attacks in Paris and San Bernardino, and the call by Donald Trump, now the presumptive Republican presidential nominee, for total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States, the U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations, a national umbrella group, announced plans to register 1 million voters. With your existence in society in danger, you try to mobilize your community, said the organization's Secretary General, Usama Jamal. You have to be part of the entire society. While the effort is mostly geared towards the November election, groups in Oakland have made a push to register Muslims in time for the state primary, California state primary, on June 7th. Excuse me. Drives were held on a recent Friday at 21 mosques and Islamic centers in the Bay Area and Sacramento, and at 7 places in the Los Angeles area. Muslims are a big campaign issue, as big as the climate, the economy, and immigration. We've spoken about it as if we're not here, said Rusha Latif, an organizer of the Rock the Muslim Vote campaign. We want to amplify our voices, and for organizers, the time is ripe for registration.
Couple shorter articles. Pizza Hut says it will remove more artificial ingredients from its pizza pies in the next year. The company already killed artificial flavors and colors from some of its pizzas last year. Pizza Hut says the preservatives BHA and BHT will be removed from all of its meat by next month. Artificial preservatives and cheese will be kept by next year. Chicken used as pizza topping will be free of human antibiotics by March. Some of the world's biggest restaurant chains have been tinkering with their recipes to appeal to people who are paying more attention to ingredient labels. McDonald's Corp, for example, is testing chicken McNuggets without artificial preservatives. Pizza Hut, owned by Louisville, Kentucky-based Yum Brands, has about 16,000 restaurants. And from Connecticut, a Connecticut home that is a replica of Thomas Jefferson's Monticello has been sold at auction for more than $2.1 million, far below the $7.7 million it cost to build just 2 years ago. The listing agent, Sherry Milkey of William Pitt Sotheby's International Realty, tells the Republican newspaper of Springfield, Massachusetts, that the 10,000 square foot home in Summers was sold Tuesday to a local doctor. She did not disclose a name. Jack Hoyt, project sales manager for Concierge Auctions of New York City, said the buyer plans to move into the home. S. Presley Blake, the co-founder of the Massachusetts-based Friendly's restaurant chain, is a longtime admirer of Jefferson and had the home built just before his 100th birthday. He never lived inside of it, but held functions in it. That's what I do. Just buy a house to have parties in.
Yeah. I got a shed out in the backyard.
10,000 square feet?
No. I can get the lawnmower in it. In its quest to build a global empire, Uber has turned to the Middle East for its biggest infusion of cash from a single investor. Uber said on Wednesday it's raised $3.5 billion from Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, the kingdom's main investment fund. The money was part of the ride-hailing giant's most recent financing round and continued to value the company at $62.5 billion. The investment does not cash out any of Uber's existing investors. As part of the investment, A managing director at the Public Investment Fund, Yasser Al-Ramayan, will take a seat on Uber's board, joining Uber's chief executive, Travis Kalanick, and other directors, including Arianna Huffington. We appreciate the vote of confidence in our business as we continue to expand our global presence, Kalanick said in a statement. Our experience in Saudi Arabia is a great example of how Uber can benefit riders, drivers, and cities as we look forward to partnering to support their economic and social reforms. Uber, which has viewed the Middle East as an important area in its expansion, said the investment further aligned the company with Saudi Arabia as the kingdom planned to transform its economy, reducing its dependence on oil and improving employment. The investments from Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest single investments collected by the technology world's top privately held companies. Uber, whose valuation makes it Silicon Valley's most valuable private business, has collected billions at a rapid clip over the last 3 years. Uber has drawn from a wide variety of investors, including traditional venture capital firms like BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. Other sovereign wealth funds like that of Qatar have also invested. They can. I got a little company they can invest in.
I like the sounds of
Probably
that.
won't.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on to the local news. The number of mumps cases connected to an outbreak at Midland University has doubled, the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services said Tuesday. The agency said May 20th that 10 cases of mumps had been reported among students and warned that the outbreak could spread as students return home for summer break. Tuesday, HHS said the number of cases had grown to 21 in the outbreak that began in mid-April. New cases have been reported by Cass, Douglas, Dodge, Hall, Madison, and Platte counties. In the past week, HHS said the agency is working with the local health departments involved to investigate the cases. The effectiveness of the mumps components of the measles, mumps, and rubella, or MMR, vaccine can wane over time. Tara Euling, director of the Three Rivers Public Health Department, said earlier that there had been 2 cases of mumps reported in the state this year prior to the cases at Midland. Mumps is a viral illness that causes swelling of glands in the face and neck. Symptoms may include an earache, jaw pain, testicular pain, fever, fatigue, and muscle aches. The virus is spread through saliva or mucus from the mouth, nose, or throat, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Mumps can be spread through coughing, sneezing, talking, and sharing cups or utensils. HHS recommends that anyone with symptoms refrain from public activities and be seen by a physician so treatment and precautions can be taken. People with the virus are considered the most contagious during the 3 days before and the 5 days after the onset of symptoms. And another short article, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, go ahead.
If I could get it to come up, there we go. The Douglas County Health Department plans to set traps beginning this month for 2 types of mosquitoes known to be able to carry the Zika virus. Okay, I did not know there were different types of mosquitoes.
Oh, boy.
It's a joint effort with the state of Nebraska to try to detect the presence of the Aedes albopicus, or Asian tiger mosquito, and the yellow fever mosquito. Local public health officials say the risk of Zika being transmitted by mosquitoes in Nebraska or Iowa remains very low, and they're not expecting to find any of the yellow fever mosquitoes around here. The primary vector of spreading Zika, the Asian tiger mosquito, lives primarily in tropical and subtropical areas. Sorry, that was actually the yellow fever mosquito they were talking about. We'd be pretty surprised to find them here, said Tom Safranek, state epidemiologist for the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. Stunned, really. But the Asian tiger mosquito occasionally has been found in Nebraska and Iowa, and frequently researchers confirm the presence of the Zika virus in an Asian tiger mosquito in Mexico. So Nebraska and Douglas County health officials want to know how many Asian tiger mosquitoes are present and where they are. Zafranek said the state will work with Douglas County and a handful of other populous areas in eastern Nebraska. For more than 10 years, the county and state have been trapping and tracking the mosquito species Collis tarsales, which transmits West Nile. They'll expand that effort this year to look for the Asian tiger mosquito and the yellow fever mosquito. The Iowa Department of Public Health has also said it will expand mosquito surveillance. These are different species of mosquito, and they are active at different times of the day. We'll be changing some things we have done in the past. Culex tarsalis mosquitoes circulate mainly at night. Public health workers trap them from dusk to dawn with traps containing carbon dioxide, which those insects find attractive. When they're caught, the state has them tested for West Nile. Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopicus are more active during the day, Safranek said. To trap those, we'll put out during the daytime a sludgy material of dead grass, leaves, compost, and water, Safranek said. Douglas County will send the mosquitoes it catches to the state of Nebraska for analysis. The state will identify the species of mosquitoes, and if they find any, they'll note how many and where they came from. They'll use the information to help guide mosquito control efforts, but for now, they won't spend the money to have the mosquitoes tested for the Zika virus. That's because the chance they would be carrying the virus in this part of the world is so minimal. For that to happen, the mosquito would have to bite an infected person while the virus was in the person's bloodstream. There have been no reports of Zika transmission in the U.S., but nearly 600 travelers have returned to the country with it, and it can be sexually transmitted. 2 cases have been reported in Nebraska and 6 in Iowa. The Douglas County Health Department advises preventing mosquito bites by using mosquito repellent, wearing loose long-sleeve shirts plus pants and socks when outdoors, and dumping or draining standing water. There you go.
Well, Mikhail Gorbachev is turning 85 years old.
Wow.
And I'm looking at a picture of him, and I can't tell it's him. You know, the 60, he doesn't look like the 60-year-old Mikhail Gorbachev anymore, except for that map of all Albania on his bald head, you know. That's the only way I can tell it's him. But seriously, in recent months, various prominent public figures, including at least one close associate of Vladimir Putin, have insisted that Russia officially proclaim Mikhail Gorbachev a criminal for abetting the collapse of the Soviet Union. Some regularly demand Gorbachev be put on trial for the events, not least, as one member of parliament put it, to expose the operations of a fifth column within Russia. Yet when the organizers of Gorbachev's 85th birthday extravaganza in March approached the landmark Hotel Ukraine about a banquet, its owners refused payment after they learned that it was being held for Gorbachev. They said that without Gorbachev, they would have ended up as a small merchants in the market, criminals dealing in contraband, said a close friend of Gorbachev's. They said, now we are the owners of this big old hotel, thanks to Gorbachev. I'm paraphrasing a little. In an interview, Gorbachev shrugged off the fact that 25 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, he remains among the most reviled men in Russia. It's freedom of expression, he said. Yet the official line denigrating traditional democracy, combined with the very idea that he should face trial, obviously irks him, so he churns out articles, essays, and books about the need to enhance freedom in Russia. His latest effort, called The New Russia in English, was released in the United States in late May. There is also great admiration for him amongst Russians as well. Some adore him for introducing perestroika, or restructuring, combined with glasnost, or openness, which together helped to jettison the worst repressions of the communist system. Gorbachev led the way, albeit haltingly, towards free speech, free enterprise, and open borders. Some love him for bringing freedom, others loathe him for bringing freedom, said a newspaper editor. One of the, and it's the Novaya Gazeta. Dmitry Moratov is the editor. It's one of the few remaining independent newspapers, and one in which Gorbachev holds a 10% stake. Society at large blames him for losing the Soviet Empire and leaving them citizens of a second-class country, even if individuals realize that he opened new horizons for them and their children. And of course, really, the Soviet Union collapsed on itself. You know, it's where the Chinese figured out they had to embrace capitalism, or it wasn't going to work.
They have done that well, haven't they?
Yes, the problem is central planning. You know, so what that, like I know, just everything I've read, the problem is central planning. That's what
we'll go with that.
Yeah, they're.
You said it very
well. If they're going to be innovative, they got to lose the central planning. And can they lose the? Can a communist government lose the central planning? Yeah. So,
not so sure there. Let's go to Lincoln. 2 judges and a private attorney are the finalists for a seat on the Nebraska Supreme Court. Otoe County District Judge Jeffrey Funk, Hall County District Judge Mark Young, and private attorney David Bargan of Adams were announced Wednesday as the finalists to represent the 5th Judicial District. Their names will now head to the desk of Governor Pete Ricketts, who will make the final decision on who will represent the Judicial District that includes Hall, Cass, and Otoe counties, among others. This will be the governor's 3rd appointment to the state's highest court since taking office in January 2015. That is the most Supreme Court appointments by a Nebraska governor since former Governor Ben Nelson, who appointed 8 judges during his 8 years in office. The appointee will replace Judge William Connolly, who announced in April he was retiring from the 7-member court. Connolly, 78, was appointed by Nelson and has served on the Supreme Court for 22 years. His retirement is effective August 1st. Funk of Nebraska City was appointed to the district bench in 2013 by former Governor Dave Heineman. He served as a county judge since 2007 and formerly worked as a prosecutor and partner in the Hoke, Funk, and Parch law firm in Nebraska City. He graduated from the University of Nebraska College of Law in 1994. Young of Grand Island was appointed judge in December 2014 by Heineman and served as Hall County attorney from 2004 to January of 2015. He also worked with Anderson, Vipperman, Covando, Wetzel, and Young law firm in Grand Island. He graduated from the NU College of Law in 1982. And Bargan of Adams has been a partner since 2012 and an associate since 2006 with the Remble Ledke law firm in Lincoln and Seward. He graduated from NU College of Law in 2004. I see a trend there. Others who applied for the vacancy were Nemaha County District Judge Daniel Bryan Jr., Clay County Judge Michael Burns, Michael Sullivan of Hastings, and Bradley White of Omaha.
Okay, this kind of fits in with what I was talking about before with China's had tremendous growth, but how innovative are they? And this talks about all the tech giants being in America, but the rest of the world doesn't so much like that. Imagine you're a French lawmaker. For decades, you've protected your nation's cultural output with the diligence of a gardener tending a fragile patch against invasive killer weeds. You've imposed quotas on the French film industry, required radio stations to play more French music than anyone seems to want to listen to. And you've worked methodically to exempt your actions from international free trade rules. I've never heard of French music, British music, but
yeah, British invasion, not the French.
And British bands are still very popular. And now, out of nowhere, comes a handful of American technology companies to wash away all your cultural defenses. Suddenly, just about everything that a French citizen buys, reads, watches, or listens to flows in some way or another through these behemoths. There's Facebook co-opting your news media, Amazon dominating book sales, while YouTube and Netflix are taking over television and movies. And the smartphone, arguably the era's most important platform for entertainment, is controlled almost entirely by Apple and Google, iPhone, Android. The backdrop of social anxiety explains why Europe is on the march against American tech giants. European governments have been at the forefront of an effort to limit the reach of tech companies, most often through privacy regulations and antitrust investigations. Now the European Commission is considering rules that would require streaming companies like Netflix to carry and even pay for more local content on the markets they serve. The European efforts are just a taste of a coming global freakout over the power of the American tech industry. Over the next few years, we're bound to see increasing friction between the tiny group of tech companies that rule much of the industry and the governments that rule the lands those companies are trying to invade. What's happened in Europe is playing out in China, India, and Brazil, and across the rest of the globe. The result is fragmentation. Once, not too long ago, many in the tech industry believed that digital technology would bring about the dawn of a new global order. The internet's structure was decentralized and non-hierarchical. It therefore seemed immune to control by any single government. Under this dream, the network would bridge vast distances and connect cultures, creating a new system of legal norms that were more uniform around the world. But it's not been playing out that way. In fact, even in America, it was ruled a utility. So my assumption is this is only the beginning, said Daosheng Zhang, director of the Asian Law Center at the University of Washington School of Law. We'll be seeing more of these governments make their own demands, and the problem is of fragmentation of the global tech companies, he added. This could be a problem for America in the 21st century. This dynamic may not sound new, whether it comes to taxes, privacy, free speech, or security. National governments have always sought to impose rules on transnational corporations. But the battle with the tech giants seems to be more spectacular. And the companies, which this author calls the Frightful Five, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, and Alphabet, that's the parent company of Google, have created a set of inescapable tech platforms that govern much of the business world. And it's creating a real challenge for France, and we're going to, and China. It's kind of difficult for the tech companies to do business in China because of censorship. Oh. But that doesn't stop Mark Zuckerberg for learning Mandarin and spending a lot of time over there. So it's interesting stuff.
And they don't even allow Facebook over there. China has their
that's
own
right.
version
They don't.
of
Yeah, they
Facebook.
don't allow Facebook, but he's making a lot of friends over there. I've seen on the news.
That's very cool.
Yeah, me and Mark, we're
Facebook friends.
Pretty close. Yeah, Facebook. We're pretty close.
I like
He did do a live interview today with the International Space Station astronauts.
Wow.
Yeah, he did. He was doing that, so that was pretty cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back in time a little bit. In Grand Island, after being assured he wouldn't have to endure any flips or tricks on his ride, 91-year-old Verdi Luckow danced his way across the tarmac at Trego Dugan Aviation on Tuesday morning. All smiles, Luckow was assisted into a two-seat cherry red 1942 Boeing Stearman biplane before pulling on his headgear. Luckow made sure to wave to those watching from the tarmac, yelling goodbye as the propellers gained speed. For the 15 minutes, Luckow was taken back to the past as he rode in the aircraft once used to train World War II pilots. Luckow's dream flight was made possible through the Ageless Aviation Dreams Foundation and the plane's pilot for the day, Captain Mike Summers. Founded by Darrell Fisher in 2011, the nonprofit organization honors U.S. military veterans living in long-term care facilities by providing flights in 1940s aircraft. With a mission to give back to those who have given, Foundation volunteer Lynn Summers said the reactions from veterans are what make the work worth it. Many people tuck their stories away and bring them out when the plane comes out, Summers said. We always say the Sturman talks. Tuesday was just the second time the organization was in Grand Island and the first time a resident from Country House Residence took part. Program coordinator Brenda Wiltfong found out about the opportunity with just one slot left for flight. A few days after applying, Wiltfong found out that Luckow had secured the final spot, earning an excited reaction from the staff at Country House. As program coordinator, Wiltfong aims to connect residents with things that were important in their life. It's amazing to be able to see the faces and do these kind of things to help, she said. We try to make those connections for them from their past because they can still hold on to those things. Tuesday morning's adventure was a surprise for Luckow, who didn't know he was going until a couple hours before the flight. He agreed the surprise was a good one. Yeah, you bet it was, Luckow said. I sure enjoyed it. Luckow was drafted at 18 to serve in the U.S. Army during World War II. After the war, he joined the Air Force and spent 8 years repairing planes, including Sturmans, although he never had the opportunity to fly one. In addition to Wiltfong and the Summerses, Luckow was joined on the tarmac by Country House Director Nicole Campbell, Resident Service Coordinator Megan Moore, and friends Wayne and Butch. He's an incredible man, and this is an incredible organization, especially with the gift they're giving, Wiltfong said. 8 other veterans from the Grand Island Veterans Home and Riverside Lodge had the opportunity to fly Tuesday. Helping out with the operations were Sports Clip team member Tim Scott, his family, and employees from Omaha and Lincoln areas. Sports Clip partners with Ageless Aviation. At each of the stops, employees come across the nation volunteer at each site, talking with flyers, providing a snack and rest area, and cheering as the plane takes off and lands. We brought members of our team out and we make banners and cheer them on, Scott said. Just to be able to say thank you and cheer them on and help them live out one of their dreams is priceless. With 3 planes spread across the U.S., Ageless Aviation and its volunteers give flights to as many veterans as possible. This October, the organization will be giving its 2,000th flight. The Summerses, who live in Scottsdale, Arizona, volunteer for the organization by picking up the plane and flying it to about 10 different cities before dropping it off to the next pilot to take flight. The couple came from Sweetwater, Texas, and will be stopping for a flight in Lincoln before heading to Chicago. Lynn said the work with the organization combines her experience as a registered nurse and her husband's work as a pilot. Each month, they volunteer about 10 days to help with the flights.
Well, I think I'm going to get into the obits, Connie. I got the Lincoln Journal Star, and then you'll do Omaha. So,
yes, sir.
Okay. Antoinette Andres, 90, of Lincoln. Mass of Christian burial will be held on Friday at St. Teresa Catholic Church, 10 a.m. Memorials are suggested to St. Teresa's or the Pius X Foundation. Buthras Master in Love is the funeral home. Margaret Armstrong, 88, of Lincoln. Funeral service 10 a.m. Monday, June 6th at the Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home, 14th Street in Lincoln. Joyce Chandler, 78, of Lincoln. Service is going to be held at 2 p.m. Saturday at the Kingham Hall of the Jehovah's Witnesses in Lincoln. Aspen Aftercare is handling her arrangements. Jeanette Dodling, 58, of Lincoln. Memorial service 10 a.m. Saturday at Roper and Sons Chapel on O Street. Durkoff, Rosemarie Durkoff, 76 of Lincoln. Funeral service is going to be 3 p.m. Friday at the Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Memorials to Frieden's Lutheran Church. Dunlap, Marjorie Dunlap, 87 of Tucson. Memorial service will be conducted at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, July 20th at the Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Burial is going to be in Lincoln Memorial Park Cemetery. Houghton Farr, 73, served in the Marines. Memorial service 3 p.m. Thursday at Wyoka Funeral Home on O Street. Memorials in care of the family. Harms, Inverna Harms of Hebron. Funeral service 11 a.m. Friday at Faith Lutheran Church in Hebron. Kroll Funeral Home, Hebron, handling the arrangements. Heinke, Virginia Heinke, 75 of Lincoln. Funeral is going to be 11 a.m. Thursday, June 2nd at First Lutheran Church in Lincoln. Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home on 14th Street, handling the arrangements. Memorials in care of the family. Scott Hauk, 56 of Strang. Memorial service 10:30 a.m. Friday at Trinity Lutheran Church in Bruning. Memorials to the family for future designation. Farmers and Son Funeral Home handling the arrangements. Leo Jordaning, 81 of Fairbury. Joyce Kugel, 61. Memorial service 10 a.m. June 3rd at Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. In lieu of flowers, memorials to the family, and they'll designate them at a later time. Arrangements by Lincoln Funeral Home. Scott Long, 50 of Lincoln. Family greeting 4 p.m. Sunday at Wyoka Funeral Home. Services will be announced. Margaret Loiter, 98 of Lincoln. A celebration of her life will be at 10 a.m. Thursday at Boothris Master and Love Funeral Home on A Street. Memorials are suggested to Sacred Heart Catholic Church. Nan Neal, 77. Celebration of her life will be 12:30 Friday, this coming Friday, Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. This is a change of service, by the way. Robert Olson, 87. Memorial service will be 10:30 Thursday, June 2nd, First Presbyterian Church on 17th Street in Lincoln. Memorials are suggested to First Presbyterian Church or Sestris Shrine Transportation Fund, Boothris Master and Love Funeral Home handling the arrangements. Adeline Pekka, 92 of Wahoo. Mass of Christian burial, 10 a.m. Friday at St. Wenceslas Catholic Church in Wahoo. Memorials in care of the family for a future designation. Marcy Sabota Funeral Home handling the arrangements. Jean Faulkner, 93 of Lincoln. Funeral service 10:30 Friday at First Presbyterian Church in Manning. Ode Funeral Home handling the arrangements. Richard Powers, 76 of Palmyra. Funerals 11 a.m. June 2nd at the Palmyra Presbyterian Church. Fuseman Allen Harvey Funeral Home handling the arrangements. Richard Schaaf, 94 of Shelby. funeral is going to be 10 o'clock on Thursday at, and that's June 2nd, at Shelby Sacred Heart Catholic Church. Dubas Funeral Home handling the arrangements. Jerry West, 51 of Lincoln, memorial service 10 a.m. Thursday at the Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home on 14th Street. White, Susan White of York. Wright, Donald Wright of Lincoln. Von Fange, Theodore Von Fange of Utica. And that's what I got for the obits from Lincoln.
Okay, we'll move on to the obituaries for the Omaha World Herald, rather. Barons, Dennis D. Barons, 76 of Utan. Memorials to the St. John's Lutheran Church in Utan, Humane Society, or Region 5. And Reichmuth Funeral Services, or funeral homes in Utan, is in charge. Bonnet, Jerome P. Joe Bonnet Jr., 51. Memorials to the Bonnet Children Education Fund, ATO Fraternity Lincoln Chapter, or Morning Star Lutheran Church. Efi Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler in charge of services. Brownell, Helen Marie Brownell, 98 of Council Bluffs. Memorials are suggested to the College of the Ozarks in Point Lookout, Missouri, and New Horizon Presbyterian Church. Cutler, O'Neill, Meyer, Woodring, and Council Bluffs in charge of services. Earl, Bernard J. Earl, 93. Bills are not listed. John A. Gentleman in charge of services. Graffius, Barbara Jane Graffius, 82. Memorials to the Shriners Hospital or St. Jude's Children's Hospital. John A. Gentleman Mortuary, 72nd Street Chapel, in charge of services. Greco Reese, Gail M. Greco Reese, 59. Memorials to Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home, in charge of services. Grudel, Dennis J. Grudel, 65, of Persia, Iowa. Memorials are suggested to the Polycystic Kidney Disease Foundation, Cutler, O'Neill, Meyer, Woodring, Bayless Park Chapel, and Council Bluffs in charge. Hackakey, Lita Hackakey, 81. Memorials are suggested to the American Cancer Society, Reichmuth Funeral Home, in charge of services. Hansher, Vicky Sue Hansher, 59 of Blair. Memorials to the American Diabetes Association, Roeder Mortuary, in charge of services. Harper, Charles Michael Mike Harper, 89. Memorials are suggested to your favorite charity in Mike Harper's memory, John A. Gentleman Mortuary, 72nd Street Chapel, in charge of services. Healy, Joanne M. Healy, 85. No memorials listed. Heafy, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler, in charge of services. Henry, Master Sergeant USAF retired Patrick E. Henry Jr. Memorials to the Gideons International in somewhere in Tennessee. I apologize, can't read that. And let's see, also memorials would be directed by the family. Bellevue Memorial Chapel of Heafy, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler, in charge of services. Herrera Martinez, Alejandra P. Herrera Martinez, 39. No memorials listed. Bethany Funeral Home, in charge of services. Hinkle, Francis Paul Frank Hinkle, 55 of Ottawa, Iowa. No memorials listed, and the Rush Family Care Service in Ottawa is in charge of services. Homes, Dr. T.J. Holmes, 64. Memorials to the Open Door Mission and the Down Syndrome Alliance of the Midlands. John A. Gentleman Mortuary is in charge of services. Yankee, Dorothy A. Parks Yankee, 85. Memorials to St. Philip Neri Church, Roeder Mortuary, 108th Street Chapel in charge. McDonald, David R. McDonald, 57. Bethany Funeral Home in charge of services. Mallet, C. Woodrow Woody Mallet, 97. Complete notice later. Nussendorfer, Urban J. Nussendorfer, 91. Memorials to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, Salvation Army, or American Lung Association. Hefe Hoffman Dork Cutler Bel Air Chapel in charge of services. Quinlan, Dr. Morris F. Quinlan, 86. Memorials to Sienna Francis House or Creighton University, Roeder Mortuary, 108th Street Chapel in charge of services. Richter, Mary Richter, 61 of San Antonio, Texas. Porter Loring Mortuary North in San Antonio is in charge of services. Roth, Patricia A. Harriet Patty Roth, 78. Memorials to the family. And Hefe Hoffman Dwork and Cutler in charge of services. Redloff, Thomas Francis Redloff, 76. Memorials to Josie Harper Hospice House, John A. Gentleman Mortuary in charge of services. Zobchiks, Edward Thomas Zobchiks, and that's Sobczzyk, 97. And memorials may be made to Creighton Prep High School or St. Margaret Mary Catholic Church. John A. Gentleman Mortuary is in charge of services. Thomas, June Thomas, 77. No memorials listed. Forest Lawn Funeral Home in charge of services. Thuringer, David C. Thuringer, 30. Memorials will be directed by the family. Bellevue Memorial Chapel, Hefe Hoffman Dwork and Cutler in charge. Welch, Jack Roosevelt Welch Sr., age 82. Thomas Funeral Home in charge of services. Zandahas, Rachel H. Zandahas, 76. No memorials listed. Carrasco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home in charge of services. Zill, John M. Zill, 49. Preferred memorials to Art for Life Foundation or Nebraska Humane Society. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries, Pacific Street Chapel in charge of services. Listeners' memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donation should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter.
All right. I'm going to bring this right to your break. And then it's going on.
Boy, you're right. They're getting younger all the time. I had the same thing. You know, I'm like reading some of this. I'm like, oh, goodness. Although 61 still sounds old to me, and I turned 61 in a couple of weeks. I make up for it by having a maturity of a 15-year-old.
Right, me too. I swear the older I get, the younger I get.
Where this event will be held, it will be held at 1313 Fire Street. And this is at the Nebraska Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired.
Well, I think I was kind of following how they did on some of those fundraising efforts. Omaha Gives, I think they made like 15 grand. I don't know how they're doing with proceeds, but that's a neat deal too. Have you ever met Linda?
No.
She's kind of their promo coordinator, fundraising coordinator.
Okay.
And she's just great with people. I mean, she's real outgoing, real nice, real sweet.
That's awesome. I haven't met her. I've met Becca a couple of times.
Becca's real sharp too. I'm real impressed, for
Really good.
she's got a real good way with people. And I shot a little video when they were doing a remote at Walgreens a couple of weeks ago. And her and Linda were on camera, and Becca could be a news reporter. I mean, she's got a real presence.
Oh, awesome.
So,
That's what they need.
but she's got a way with people.
A good way, right?
Yeah, a good way with people.
Everybody has a way with people.
Everybody has a way with people. Mine has a tendency to be away with people. Leave me alone. Well, I can start with I got an editorial.
Awesome. Sorry, that was just too funny to look at.
All right. Well, that takes us to the end of your break. I want you to remember that this is your Radio Talking Book Network, your print information network, serving Nebraska and its neighboring states. The Radio Talking Book Network is brought to you in cooperation from KIOS-FM in Omaha and statewide through the NET Radio Network. Well, since that brings us to the end of your break, that means it's time to go back to your live reading for you. So I'm going to hand it on over back to your readers, and they're going to get right on back to your live reading for you.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Steve Sleeper here. I'm doing the New York Times, and Connie Butterworth will be along with the Omaha World Herald, and she'll have some letters to the editor and stuff like that. And I've got something here from the opinion page of the New York Times. The New York Times has long been known for having a really well done opinion page. Now, I'm not talking about politics, I'm just saying well written. And one of their best writers, arguably, is Thomas Friedman. He's always being interviewed by every major network out there, from NBC to CNN to even Fox. So anyhow, he's got an editorial that I just got to read. Clinton's Fibs and Her Opponents Double Whoppers, by Thomas L. Friedman. Your Honor, I rise this week in defense of Hillary Clinton. I see from polls that Hillary scores very low on trustworthy questions. Well, let's talk about truth in politics. All politicians shade the truth at times. Some do it more than others. Indeed, when Donald Trump tells the truth, it should be labeled breaking news. Trump tells truth without immediately contradicting himself. We're going live to the scene right now. Here's what is relevant. Lying is serious business. But Hillary's fibs, or lack of candor, are all about bad judgments she made on issues that will not impact the future of either my family or my country. Private email servers, cattle futures, Goldman Sachs lectures, all really stupid, says Thomas Friedman, but my kids will not be harmed by these poor calls. Debate where she came out on Iraq and Libya, if you will, but those were considered judgment calls, and if you disagree, don't vote for her. But while Hillary's struggles with the whole truth on certain issues have garnered huge attention, driving up her negatives, Trump and Bernie Sanders have been getting away with some full Burger King double whoppers that will come crashing down on the whole country if he either gets the chance to do what he says. Trump told a biker rally in Washington on Sunday, When you think of the great General Patton and all our generals, they are spinning in their graves when they watch We Can't Beat ISIS. We're going to knock the hell out of them. Then, for good measure, he repeated his longstanding call to build a wall along the Mexican border. And when he asked who would pay for it, the crowd shouted in unison, "Mexico." Trump added, "Not even a doubt." Really, not even a doubt? Why hasn't President Obama been a real man and just carpet bombed ISIS off the face of the earth? Answer: one, ISIS is embedded in urban areas among Iraqi and Syrian civilians, so we can't carpet bomb the terrorists without killing all the civilians around them. Two, if Obama sent the 82nd Airborne into Mosul and wiped out ISIS after horrific door-to-door fighting, the morning after the battle, we would own Mosul, but there would be no agreement among Sunni tribes there, let alone the Kurds, Shiites, and neighboring Turkey over who should control Mosul post-ISIS. In other words, we'd be stuck governing it. So Obama's trying to squeeze ISIS with one hand while trying to squeeze Iraqis to come together around a post-ISIS order with the other. It's called being strategic, and General Patton would be applauding from his grave. On Mexico, please tell me why it would pay for a multi-billion-dollar wall on our border and how we would compel our neighbor to do so, and what impact that would have on U.S. companies to act as those aren't even issues as fraud. Trump's tax plan, the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center estimates that it would decrease tax revenues over 10 years by $11.2 trillion. And since Trump has ruled out entitlement cuts, he would need to slash all the discretionary federal spending by 80%. That's where the defense, research, and education budgets come from. This is not just magical thinking, it's nonsense. And if Trump implemented half of it, your kids would pay dearly. As for Sanders, he's promising to break up the big banks. Under what legal authority? What would be the economic fallout? And how would this raise stagnant incomes for middle-class Americans? Bernie mumbles on these questions. The Tax Policy Center said in a study of Sanders' full economic plan, including free health care with no premiums or co-pays and free college education, more generous Social Security benefits, and 12 weeks of family leave. This is what they said. Even though Sanders would raise taxes on nearly all households by more than $15 trillion over the next decade, his plan still would add an additional $18 trillion plus at least $3 trillion in interest to the national debt over the period, thereby creating an enormous fiscal challenge. Even eliminating the defense budget wouldn't come close to balancing the books. If you're a college student feeling the burn, I hope you're wearing sunscreen because if Sanders wins, you and your kids will be paying for his cash burn for eternity. All lying in politics is not created equal. I think the ideology Bernie is selling is fanciful, but underlying it is a moral critique of modern capitalism that has merit and deserves to be heard. But Bernie is not being truthful about the costs. What is grating about Hillary is that her provocations seem so unnecessary and often insult our intelligence, but they are not about existential issues. As for Trump, his lies are industrial size and often contradict each other, but there's no theory behind his lies except what will advance him, which is why Trump is only scary if he wins. Otherwise, his candidacy will leave no ideas behind. It'll be like a reality TV show that got canceled. This is serious. We are about to elect all three branches of our government. I wish we had better choices, but given the options, I'd vote for the candidate who is most likely to be a practical unifier and get things done, and who only tells whoppers about herself, not about my country's future.
All right, let's take a look at the public pulse. When I think about Memorial Day, I think of Frank Anthony. Frank, whom we all called Ham Anthony, was a couple of years older than I was and was drafted in 1944 after he graduated from high school. During the Battle of the Bulge, he was severely wounded during a shelling. His face bore the scars, and he had little use of his legs. I visited him at the O'Reilly General Hospital in Missouri on my way to Process to go to the Pacific. We spent a couple of days together, and after the war, I drove his mother and sister to the Fitzsimmons General Hospital in Denver. He spent a lot of time in hospitals. He finally returned home, but in the late 40s, he, along with his mother and sister, moved to Oregon so he would not have to fight the snow and ice. It was not long until he died. Ham, know that you're not forgotten as long as I live. And that's signed by Larry Loeffler of Fremont. I was very impressed by my first visit to Omaha's Forest Lawn Cemetery, but was shocked to see numerous veterans' graves with no Memorial Day markings at all. This is inexcusable. In rural communities, all veterans' graves are given a flag on Memorial Day weekend. Nobody is forgotten, ever. I used to head up the local Boy Scouts to do the task. Now with the Scouts gone, I get up out of bed early on a Saturday and with the local vets put flags on the graves in my local cemetery. It is an honor. If the graves in Arlington National Cemetery can be decorated this way every year, every grave here can be too. Local vets, VFW and Legion Post, their auxiliaries, local scouts, and volunteers to get organized and get flags on every grave of every veteran for this holiday in the future. And that's from Robert Burns in Lyons, Nebraska. Excuse me. I remember doing many things because of rationing, doing without many things because of rationing in World War II. I remember the long Army convoys destined for the South Pacific. I remember the prayers offered for classmates' fathers killed in action and the gold star displayed in their front windows. I remember New Mexico Baton Death March veterans walking down a highway on their knees, thankful that they were home. I remember these things, and I'm sure many others do. That's why there won't be an apology offered by an American president for using atomic weapons to end a war that wasn't of our choosing. And that's from Donald George in Columbus, Nebraska. And one more for right now from Howard Kennedy in Omaha. One thing is disappointing is Iowa's loss to Ohio State in the Big Ten baseball tournament championship game was Mecca's inability to anticipate a large turnout and react accordingly. A spokeswoman for the Metropolitan Entertainment and Convention Authority said, obviously we had more fans than we anticipated. Really? The state of Iowa is less than 5 minutes from Lot D, and there are thousands of Iowa grads in the Omaha area, an hour in line for tickets, and more than 45 minutes in line for refreshments just doesn't cut it.
Okay, this is a op-ed piece in the New York Times written by Andy Horowitz, who's an assistant professor of history at Tulane in New Orleans and is writing a book on Hurricane Katrina. Headline, New Orleans' new flood maps and outline for disaster. Today, June 1, is the first day of hurricane season, an understandably anxious time for New Orleans. That's why I was briefly elated and then horrified when earlier this year the federal government declared most of New Orleans safe from flooding. According to new maps issued by FEMA, even vast areas of the city that are below sea level, including parts of the lower Ninth Ward, Lakeview, and New Orleans East that sat under 10 feet of water after Katrina, need not worry about the next storm. But as a historian of disasters, the author knows that FEMA maps offer a myopic view of New Orleans' vulnerability. They threaten to put thousands of people at greater risk and offer even more ominous evidence of our country's stumbling efforts to reckon with climate change. The maps in question, called digital flood insurance rate maps, are a crucial component of the National Flood Insurance Program, which Congress created in 1968 to subsidize flood insurance, which private insurers would not otherwise offer, in exchange for communities' regulated land use in flood-prone areas. The maps designate special flood hazard areas where FEMA estimates there is a 1% or greater chance of flooding in any given year for anyone seeking a mortgage in those areas. Flood insurance is mandatory for those folks. The flood insurance rate maps for New Orleans that were in force in 2005, when the federal levee system failed during Katrina, dated from the 1980s. They offered a relatively accurate prediction of the city's vulnerability. About 80% of New Orleans flooded. Nonetheless, New Orleans officials protested in 2009 when FEMA released drafts of new maps suggesting most of the city was still vulnerable. Knowing the flood maps would shape the city's future, dictating property values, insurance premiums, and perceptions of the city's viability, the officials claimed FEMA had not adequately taken into account the protection offered by the $14.5 billion that was put into the levee system post-Katrina. Now, more than 6 years of waiting and wrangling, the finalized maps FEMA released this spring reflect the most optimistic possible assessment. FEMA's maps mean homeowners who have rebuilt in many neighborhoods flooded in 2005, including he lists a couple areas that will flood, he says, will no longer be required to buy flood insurance. Insurance rates will fall despite the city's cautions to the contrary. Many will forego coverage altogether. Property values will rise. Cash-strapped New Orleans will celebrate. But many of us will hold our breath through hurricane season nonetheless, because we know that the maps reflect questionable assumptions.
And some more editorials from the Public Pulse. Still at TD Ameritrade Park. To the Iowa Hawkeyes and Ohio State Buckeye fans who waited in my food concession stand line for 40 minutes, I am sorry. The seasoned Hawkeye fans and many more who complained about their peanut purchase waiting time deserved better treatment. If Mecca and the Big Ten didn't think that Hawkeye fans would support their school, I am not sure that they are the correct management for this series. I worked with volunteers from Offutt Air Force Base and band parents from Millard West High School at the concession stand. I'm the proud parent of 2 Millard West students. We all volunteered to help raise money for our kids' sports and band programs. I hope these Hawkeye fans come back and attend the College World Series. We have a world-class baseball stadium. The CWS is the benchmark for college sporting events. Mecca and the Big Ten struck out for service for the Big Ten championship. They better not at the CWS. We owe all fans better service, and that's from Tom Rodas Jr. in Omaha. Most people have heard the phrase prison pipeline thrown around in conversations about education or incarceration, but what is it really? The pipeline is an increasing threat in America in which students, mostly minorities and boys, are funneled from their schools into the juvenile justice system. For these youths, being arrested at such a young age makes going to prison a normal part of their lives and increases the possibility for recidivism. These young people are not criminals, so why are they being criminalized? Harsh disciplinary practices in some of our schools contribute to the pipeline. What was once misbehavior is now a criminal act. In-school arrests have increased since the employment of police officers in school. Too often, guards and officers, rather than teachers, handle small disruptions or misbehaviors in classrooms, causing small problems to escalate. Punishment, like suspension, takes kids out of the classroom, causing students to fall behind and act out at school. Of course, disciplinary measures are necessary in school for students who are threatening a safe learning environment. However, should we be criminalizing young people who have only committed small infractions? Arresting students early on can delay their journey to a high school diploma and set them up for a life in which correctional facilities are the norm. And that's from Natalie Seeger in Omaha. Can you imagine how President Donald Trump would have handled a visit to Hiroshima? Would it be the same way he's handled POW Navy Lieutenant Commander John McCain, saying he liked those soldiers who weren't captured? Would he handle it the same way that President Barack Obama handled it, with grace, thoughtfulness, and dignity? Would it be the same way Hillary Clinton would handle it, with experience, preparedness, and respect? How would veterans want their commander-in-chief to handle it? And that's signed by Grant Hoover, Papillion, former captain, U.S. Marine Corps. Sunday would have been John F. Kennedy's 99th birthday. He would roll over in his grave if he could see what's happening in D.C. The famous line from his first inaugural speech, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country," has become a joke. Let's say you hire a plumber to fix a leak in a basement faucet. He's been at it for 3 days after telling you the job would take about 3 hours. You go down and see that the basement is flooded and there's a dozen more leaks. You ask him what he's going to do about this mess, and he says, "Ask not what I can do for you, ask what you can do for me. Give me more time and more money." You'd fire him. What our government is doing is asking us for more time and money to do its job. There are thousands of examples of government failure, but I'll pick just one. The VA has failed our service personnel miserably, and Congress was all up in arms about going to get to the bottom of this problem. What happened? It gave the offenders more money. Perhaps that is why Donald Trump is gaining more attention. He's not part of the failed government. And that's from Michael McLaughlin of Omaha. 2 years ago, while I was still living in Omaha, I didn't vote for Ben Sasse for U.S. Senate, but I admire him very much, despite our ideological differences. The fashionable thing would be for Sasse to endorse likely Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump, as so many have. But Sasse is showing me something. He is not a typical politician. He isn't willing to do the typical thing and go along. Sasse is the total opposite of Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who has shown his hypocritical colors. It was Rubio who called Trump a con man when Rubio was still running for the GOP presidential nomination. Now that Trump has the nomination, Rubio supports Trump. There are far too few politicians like Ben Sasse in either party, willing to stand on principle no matter what. And that's from Herb Vermas of Salem, Illinois. And the last one, when I played competitive sports decades ago, we used to joke about our weakest player would be the best player on the opposing team. Sadly, Ben Sasse is that player on the current Republican team. And that's from Dennis Schaefer of Omaha.
Okay, let's move over to arts and entertainment, and this is from the arts section of the New York Times. Dateline, Mexico City. It's a simple sculpture, 64 concrete pyramids that stand in a perfect circle around 2.5 acres of rippling black volcanic rock, known as, and I'm going to use the English translation, sculptural space. The sculpture was inaugurated in 1979 on the campus of the National Autonomous University of Mexico. It's considered one of the most important pieces of land art in Mexico, a tranquil oasis in a chaotic city, but the recent construction of a white 8-story building nearby has prompted angry protests that pits the university's needs against Mexico's cultural heritage. The campaign against the building, which looms over the 13-foot pyramids from less than a quarter mile away, has drawn hundreds of artists, architects, and intellectuals from Mexico and beyond. A Change.org petition to protect the work has gathered more than 30,000 signatures. Prominent cultural figures have published letters in the press or posted video statements on Facebook defending the sculpture. About 300 students and faculty members of the university's architectural school signed a letter to the head of the department in April calling for the building to be modified or demolished. For the artist, the building, which belongs to the social science faculty, ruins the line of the sky against the flat tops of the pyramids. All the great works of land art, the horizon is how they function. The artist Anish Kapoor said in an interview at the site last week, anything that intrudes on the art takes away some of the poetic, unnameable qualities of the work. About 24 artists have said they would be willing to auction works to pay to move the building. You can't move the lava, you can't move the landscape, so you have to move the building. Some students raised concerns last year about several construction projects on campus, including Building H, and this is all about the new building, and it looks like crap next to the artwork building. Land art is what they call it, in which the landscape is integral to the work. It's remote and it's huge, such as Robert Smithson's spiral jetty on the shore of the Great Salt Lake. That's another sample of what they call land art. Patricia Martin, an independent curator in Mexico City, said Building H was typical of rampant Mexican construction where people do not make the effort to think what the impact's going to be. And they show a picture here, and you can see kind of the pyramid type buildings and then this white nondescript building behind it, and it really doesn't fit in. And so it probably wasn't a good place to build something next to land art, which is really cool. And this building is pretty sterile and nondescript. And they're talking about moving the building, which I don't know how that happens. It's like a 4 or 5 story building. I don't know if they can do that, but interesting art story from the New York Times.
Definitely. All right, I'm going to jump over to the Lincoln Journal-Star for one article. Each week, the Lincoln Journal-Star will bring you a list of the upcoming holidays dedicated to the foods we eat or need to try.
You love that one.
I do. I just can't stay away from it. June 1st, World Milk Day, established by the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations in 2001. The day recognizes the importance of milk as a global food and celebrates all aspects of milk. June 2nd, sounds like my kind of day here, National Rocky Road Day.
Oh, yeah.
According to Dreyer's Ice Cream, William Dreyer created the flavor in March of 1929 when he cut up walnuts and marshmallows with his wife's sewing scissors and added them to his chocolate ice cream in a manner that reflected how his partner Joseph Eady's chocolate candy creation and incorporated walnuts and marshmallow pieces. Later, the walnuts would be replaced by pieces of toasted almond. After the Wall Street crash of 1929, Dreyer and Eady gave the flavor its current name to give folks something to smile about in the midst of the Great Depression. June 3rd, National Chocolate Macaroon Day. On the heels of National Macaroon Day, which was May 31st, comes this chocolate version of the holiday. The original macaroon was a small, sweet cake consisting largely of ground almonds, similar to Italian amaretti. June 4th, definitely can get behind this one, National Cheese Day. Here's some curds of knowledge to consider when celebrating today. There are over 2,000 varieties of cheese. America's most popular cheese recipe is macaroni and cheese. The terms big wheel and big cheese originally referred to those who were wealthy enough to purchase a whole wheel of cheese, according to Foodimentary.com. June 5th, National Ketchup Day. Ketchup's origins are Chinese, coming from ketchup, the name of a sauce derived from fermented fish, according to National Geographic's The Plate. It is believed that traders brought fish sauce from Vietnam to southeastern China in the 17th and 18th centuries when the British tried to replicate the fermented sauce using mushrooms, walnuts, and oysters. Hold on while I change the page. Or anchovies, it certainly didn't look like or taste like the staple found in most American refrigerators. That is until 1812, when scientist and horticulturist James Meese put tomatoes, which he called love apples, into his ketchup recipe. Spoilage was a huge issue until 1876, when Henry J. Heinz developed a recipe that used ripe red tomatoes, which have more of the natural preservative called pectin than the scraps other manufacturers used, and dramatically increased the amount of vinegar to reduce risk of spoilage. Today, Americans purchase 10 billion ounces of ketchup annually, which translates roughly to 3 bottles per person per year. June 6th, National Gingerbread Day. The actual date of this holiday is in somewhat of a dispute. Some say it's December 6th. Regardless, here's a bit of gingerbread facts from foodimentary.com. It originates from ancient Greeks and Egyptians who used it as a ceremonial offering. In parts of Germany, Poland, and Russia, the making of gingerbread is considered a fine art. If any of you out there are making gingerbread for June 6th, just let me know. I'll come taste test for you. And June 7th, National Chocolate Ice Cream Day. Chocolate Ice Cream Day. 1 week, 2 ice cream holidays. It takes 12 gallons of milk to make 1 gallon of ice cream. The average dairy cow can produce enough milk in her lifetime to make a little over 9,000 gallons of ice cream, according to foodimentary.com. A cow's udder can hold between 25 and 50 pounds of milk. In the U.S., all ice cream needs to have a minimum of 10% milk fat to receive the label of ice cream. There's your food facts for the week, folks.
Yeah, okay. And there's an author or a writer in the New York Times in the travel section that will do a day in a city where to go and eat and stuff. And this one's about New Orleans. 11, 12 years ago, my wife and I spent a long weekend in New Orleans, and it was the winter before Katrina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we were there probably February, and Katrina hit in the fall. And so we took all the tour buses and everything else and saw it before, before Katrina hit. I guess, probably a lot of that stuff's not there anymore.
But you're right.
But these are some of the places to go on a tourist day in New Orleans. Of course, in the French Quarter, Café du Monde. It's a coffee shop that's been serving up sugar-dusted beignets since 1862. It's a tourist magnet, but man, it's incredible. You won't be disappointed if you go there. Then cross the street and hit Jackson Square, an open-air artist colony, teeming with street performers. What else? Take in the scene. Family portraits are a fun souvenir. I think I got my portrait made. So that's kind of how you start the day. Royal carriages are veterans at winding over the cast. Okay, I'm trying. Oh, lunchtime. Okay. I'm skimming this a little bit because it's a really long article. Gather the troops and head over to Johnny's Po' Boy to score the prerequisite foodstuffs for a picnic. Exceptionally tasty sub sandwiches, they call them poor boys in New Orleans, are what hot dogs are to Chicago. Encourage the brood to live like locals. Okay, I'm assuming you got a family there with you to eschew the comfort of chicken parmesan in favor of a sandwich laden with crawfish, catfish, or oysters. Garden District, glamorous 19th century neighborhood famous for the white colonnade mansions. Tulane University's located there. They do have the old streetcar line running through there for $1.25 a ride. You can ride up and down the Garden District and out to Canal Street. Meander through Lafayette Cemetery number 1, one of New Orleans' oldest cities of the dead. Though creepy, the mazes of above-ground tombs are haltingly beautiful. Now, do you know the story behind that? What they do is they put your body in a tomb above ground, and then they let it bake for a while, and then they come back and put it in a bone box later on. what's left
Really?
of it. Yeah, that's
Oh,
how
wow.
that's because everything's got to be above ground.
Yeah.
And as this guy is, as the tour guide is telling us about it, I'm going, yee.
Definitely.
Let's see. Good Times After Dark. Rock and Bowl. Unlike the average 10-lane space blasting 70s rock from a jukebox, this New Orleans institution is a top venue for live music. And when the band begins, the dance floor fills with lively two-steppers. Children are welcome, hoofing it to whatever the nightly lineup brings. Zydeco, funk, blues, swing, swamp pop. That's a new one on me, swamp pop. Arrive at 7 p.m. for bowling. Music begins at 8:30 during the week, Sundays at 5:30. And the St. Charles Streetcar will get you there cheaply and efficiently. I think I know where that's at. It's at the edge of the Garden District. Let's see. After 8 p.m., the Frenchman Art Market. Check out local arts and crafts. Follow the music. Three Muses is a place that allows children. And he's assuming, or she's assuming, that you got your family with you and you got young kids. Preservation Hall, child-friendly jazz venue in the French Quarter. Let's see. District is a good place to get Southern food, biscuits infused with praline bacon and egg.
Ooh.
Yeah. Brulee cinnamon rolls. Dat Dogs, old school hot dog with like crawfish and duck and smoked sausages. Commander's Palace, of course, is on Canal Street. It's great food there. To combine, let's see. Okay, now he's getting back to, like, we're on the second day, and I know I've been skimming through this, but there's Canal Place, a 2-hour jazz cruise aboard the steamboat Natchez. So that's pretty cool. Wide range of hotels and well-priced bed and breakfasts. So yeah, it's kind of. I know I kind of skimmed through, but
cool.
it would have taken a
Sounds
half
like-
hour to read it.
Like
but yeah, that's
some
kind
good
of some neat
places.
things to do in New Orleans. And when I used to, of course, I don't travel anymore, but when I did, I went to so many conferences and trade shows there, and never really got to see New Orleans that much because I was, standing in front of a booth or meeting room or something. So my wife and I spent, like I said, a long weekend there, and it was. I still remember standing in the middle of the French Quarter with. We were both smoking cigars and drinking beer in the middle of the street. So yeah.
How fun!
Yeah.
I'm going to read one more piece out of the Omaha Living section before we move on. And this starts with, look at a piece by Sheila Hicks, and it's hard to avoid retracing the artist's steps with your eyes. In the artist's cascading waterfalls of fabric and small weavings filled with pine cones and feathers, viewers can see the rips, tears, and stitches. There's an urge to spend time with the tendrils of multicolored fibers wrapped together and hanging in groups like snakes. Bowls of fiber wrapped and crisscrossing one on top of the other, building around two toadstool-like structures that measure nearly 4 feet across. Where are the threads going? The wandering cords take viewers on a journey that mirrors that of the artist. Born in Hastings in 1934, Hicks spent her early childhood in Lexington and summers in Hastings with great aunts after her family moved to Detroit and Chicago. Hicks has traveled the world, picking up weaving techniques in Chile, Morocco, and other countries. She's settled in France now, but this weekend she'll be back in Nebraska. Hicks will have one of her largest homecomings yet, with an exhibition at Joslin Art Museum that opens to the public on Sunday. Hicks' work will be previewed at the Joslin Art Museum Association's Gala on Friday. A preview for Joslin members will be held on Saturday. Hicks will have a conversation with Karen Campbell, Joslin's Phil Wilson Curator of Contemporary Art, at 6 p.m. Saturday as part of a members' preview reception. When Hicks and Campbell began talking several years ago, the plan was to have a smaller exhibition featuring just Hicks' smaller works in the museum's Riley Cap Gallery. But Campbell said Hicks kept returning to the idea of having her big Nebraska moment, so Material Voices exhibition was born. The moment is big indeed. Hicks has had work on view in Nebraska before. The Museum of Nebraska Art in Kearney and Hastings College have exhibited pieces of Hicks' work. Coneco featured a piece in its fiber exhibition last year, but this is her first exhibition at the Joslin, and the large gallery gives plenty of space for the artist's work to shine. It really makes you stop, Campbell said. You can't breathe for a minute. Omaha-based tapestry artist Mary Sikafus said Hicks' work is radically different than what anyone else was doing in the 50s and 60s. She just kicked open a door for a whole movement in the textile field, Sikafus said. Hicks treats her materials as sculptural objects in and of themselves, treating giant hanks of yarn as if they were massive sculptures. If anybody had ever thought of it, they'd never hung it in an art museum. Sikafus said when Hicks began creating, weavers were not producing works of such large sizes, but in the Joslin exhibit, Hicks will display a Moroccan prayer rug that is 18 and a half feet long. Hicks paved the way for a lot of contemporary weavers. Large textile exhibitions are not common in Omaha, but Coneco's fiber exhibition last year brought people out in throngs, Sikafus said. That was the litmus test. It goes on for several pieces. Down at the end of the article, it's remarkable. At almost 82, she's still doing new things and she's still innovating, and she's making work that looks unlike anything anyone else is making. Nebraska poet Ted Kuzer, U.S. Poet Laureate from 2004 to 2006, wrote an essay for the Joslin's catalog that will be published to accompany Hicks' exhibition. He describes her work as combining that of the weaver and the shaman. Work created from the rawest of raw materials, but imbued with magic, he writes. He said when he saw the works, he felt sort of dwarfed by it. There was an elementary power to Hicks' works that affected him. He writes, that is, by their uniqueness, by comparison, this artist's beautiful work shows us not only themselves, but the rest of the world from which we have momentarily stepped away.
Well, this is from the business section of the New York Times, so I'm going to call this our business story for this evening. Some residents returned to Fort McMurray, Alberta on Wednesday for the first time since wildfires forced them out and ravaged their city a month ago. But it was hardly a triumphant homecoming, as the city's gradual reopening came amid concerns it was premature. The returning residents, identified by government-issued wristbands, were watched over by more than 300 officers of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and were given a long list of warnings. Officials told them to keep their gas tanks topped off and to take at least 2 weeks' worth of food, water, and medicine and other essentials with them, because stores and other services in the city have not fully reopened. Many of the 88,000 evacuees have been told that it's still not safe for them to return. Older folks, children under 7, pregnant women, people with any kind of variety of medical conditions, including COPD and asthma. The city's tap water is not drinkable, may not be for a while. The utilities have not come back online either. Many of those who did return on Wednesday were not expected to stay long, checking on their homes, retrieving personal items, that type of thing. It may be a long wait before things get back to normal. Environmental experts say the ash left by the fire is so caustic and full of toxins that many surviving homes in the worst hit neighborhoods got to be sealed off until September. Given all that, some residents, including members of the local city council, have questioned the timing of the return. But as crews continue to spray sealant over the ash and rubble, provincial government officials repeatedly assured the public many people could return safely, if not conveniently. Personally, I would feel quite comfortable going back, said Scott Long, the executive director of the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. We didn't work this hard to make sure people are safe, to bring them back to an unsafe area and leave them to their own devices. Rachel Notley, the premier of Alberta, agreed with Long's analysis, but warned that returning is not going to be easy. She observed after the panicked evacuation of the city, when some residents drove through funnels of flame, it's very possible the re-entry process will be the next most stressful day. Ms. Notley, who has visited the city twice since the fire broke out, added, "I think it's going to be shocking." Provincial officials have said the government underestimated the emotional and psychological effects of another major fire in 2011, which forced about 7,000 people to evacuate the town of Slave Lake, Alberta, and which ultimately destroyed about 1/3 of the community. So this time, mental health workers from across Canada have arrived there to help out with evacuees. The wildfire that scorched the city remains out of control and now covers about 1.4 million acres. But for some time, the flames have been moving away from Fort McMurray deep into largely unpopulated woodlands. And there's little unburnt forest left near the city to provide fuel. As residents retrace the evacuation route up Highway 63, the route to the city, they were greeted by firefighters who had parked 2 fire trucks on an overpass and suspended a giant Canadian flag bracketed by provincial and municipal flags on a rope tied between their raised ladders.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that's really something.
That's got to be sad to go back to.
Oh boy, yeah. And just the scope of that wildfire.
Oh my gosh, it was huge, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna slide on over to sports now, and being a Bellevue resident now, I was going to say Bellevueanian, but I have no idea how you consider someone from Bellevue. Senior Braulio Torres Perez threw a 5-hitter as Bellevue defeated Lindsey Wilson 4-1 in the NAIA World Series on Tuesday. Derek Bontempo, Jake Brown, and Connor Garrison had 2 hits apiece for the Bruins. Joe Mancuso homered in the bottom of the 8th when Bellevue scored 2 runs to break away and eliminate the Kentucky school. Torres Perez struck out 3 and didn't walk anyone. He said he did a good job of changing speeds and letting the movement of his pitches do the work for him. My teammates played really good and got me some run support, he said. It helps when the defense makes key plays in key situations. Bellevue is 2-1 in the tournament, and it's advanced to the Final Four. It's really exciting. We worked hard for it, Perez said. It's going to see everything is working out for us right now. We're ready to keep it going. The Bruins will play tonight against Lewis Clark State from Idaho at 6:35. Wednesday's games are available on ESPN3. Bellevue topped Auburn Montgomery 6-5 in 10 innings Friday night before falling 9-3 to Tennessee Wesleyan on Monday.
Football news out of Baylor, which is just a mess right now. Kenneth Starr announced Wednesday he would resign as chancellor of Baylor, effective immediately, saying it was a matter of conscience. His decision came less than a week after he was stripped of the more operationally powerful position of president of the university in the wake of the scandal in which Baylor acknowledged it had mishandled accusations of sexual assault against several football players. And it's a Baptist university with a seminary, so that's, I guess it is what it is. But I have to and willingly do accept responsibility, Starr told Outside the Lines on ESPN. The captain goes down with the ship, he said. But he also doubled down on a statement he released last week in which he said he'd been unaware of the beginning of what was later described as a widespread problem until last August, when a former football player was convicted of sexual assault. While Starr is stepping down as chancellor, a role that a Baylor regent described last week as one focused primarily on raising money as well as on religious liberty, he planned to retain his post as a tenured professor at the Baylor's law school. The scandal also claimed the job of Art Briles, the successful head football coach who the Board of Regents fired last Thursday, and Ian McCaw, the athletic director who resigned Sunday, days after the Regents had placed him on probation. Of course, the Baylor football team was in the cellar nationally, and certainly in the cellar, and was a laughingstock of the Big 12 before Art Briles came in, and then they're almost playing for national championships after about 10 years at the university. Starr said he had not been consulted on Briles' firing. He mixed some light condemnation of the coach for failing to be a stronger disciplinarian with praise, calling him a player's coach and a genius. Before entering academia as dean of the Pepperdine University School of Law in 2004 and becoming president of Baylor, the country's largest Baptist university, in 2010, Starr was an independent counsel whose report to Congress led to Bill Clinton's impeachment in 1998. And before that, he was the United States Solicitor General and a federal judge. At Baylor, Starr was credited with raising the university's national profile, along with hundreds of millions of dollars, in no small part by tying it to the university's national image to the recent success of the football team under Briles. It was Starr who nearly a year ago ordered an internal investigation into the university's handling of a former player who was convicted of sexually assaulting another Baylor athlete. That inquiry led Starr to recommend that Baylor hire outside lawyers to investigate the handling of such accusations. It was the recommendations that Starr be demoted and fire Briles. The board said in the statement last week that the investigation had found that the university's climate flouted federal gender equity laws, including Title IX. The board condemned the university leadership that had said created a cultural perception that football was above the rules, which it's not.
Very cool.
I think Tom Osborne would have always said that too.
Yeah.
You got any sports news? Or?
I do actually,
Okay.
and this article is kind of close to home. I'm going to date myself quite a bit here. In 1980,
What?
yes, I was alive back in 1980. I was the Nebraska Shrine Bowl queen, which was a pretty good accomplishment for a small town Iowa girl.
Yeah.
And looks like the Shrine Bowl is coming up yet again this year. And so I'm going to read an article about it. Moments like watching a girl tie her shoes with her only arm or getting a cast put on by other outpatients from Shriners hospitals were reminders Tuesday to the 70 Nebraska Shrine Bowl football players of why they're in Saturday's game. To Noah Font, those underscored his participation when other FBS recruits chose not to play. I felt like it would be a great experience to meet the kids who were in the hospitals. You don't get something like that often, and that's why I felt it was important to be out here, said the Iowa signee from Omaha South. I learned a lot about the hospitals, and I also learned about their outlook on life. They have a really high outlook. They take their problems as they come and keep on moving. Tuesday also was a peak for him at his career path. At Iowa, he will major in human physiology and wants to be an orthopedic surgeon. We got to deal with a lot with the orthopedic unit today and also the burn unit, he said. It was really cool, and I got to learn a lot of stuff like casting. Actually, the kids casted us since they knew what it's like to be casted so much. Fant is one of 3 FBS recruits in the 2:00 game at the University of Nebraska Kearney's Cope Stadium. The others are his teammates on the South squad, linebacker Barrett McDonald from Miller South and lineman Gavin Rush from Aurora. Not in the game are Husker signees Ben Stilley of Ashland Greenwood and David Engelkopt of Norfolk Catholic, and Kansas State-bound Nick Lenners of Lincoln Southwest. Tuesday's Beyond the Field experience interaction at Nebraska Wesleyan between the 40 Shrine patients and the players was new for the Shrine Bowl, which for years flew teams to Minneapolis, Chicago, or St. Louis for hospital visits. Madeline Hubbs, who receives her treatments in St. Louis, was the shoe-tying, show-stopping girl. That's so amazing, said North running back Sean Lambert of Fremont, who will be a Husker walk-on. She's obviously been doing it for a while, but it was pretty cool. She has a great attitude. The 35 players on each Shrine team reported to camp Saturday, with the South at Doane and Crete and the North at Wesleyan. North coach Chad Fox from Wahoo said his team came to camp in shape and ready to play. South coach Bob Sexton from Beatrice said his team has met expectations too. Sexton resigned as the Orangemen's coach after last season to focus on his duties as school administrator. When we got together as a staff for the first time, I said I wanted first and foremost high character kids. I'm not babysitting a group of kids for a week, Sexton said. When we selected players, let's start with the fact they are good football players and then make sure they're not going to be an issue for us. They have been awesome. I can't say anything but that. They have been responsible and respectful.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a great story.
Agreed.
Let's see. Alexander Rossi won the Indianapolis 500 on Sunday. 24 years old, rookie, won it on his first try.
Wow.
There's a story about him in the sports section. We'll read as much as we can of this and take it to the top of the hour and finish up the reading. He was not like most children who grew up in Nevada City, California. Most of the children in the town of 3,000 near Lake Tahoe did not wake up at 4 a.m. on Sunday mornings to watch Formula One races on television, but Rossi did. Rossi's love of the series took him overseas 7 years ago to pursue a driving career. Again, he won Indy. After becoming only the second American driver since 2006 to win at the Brickyard, Rossi has climbed to sixth place in the IndyCar standings with a weekend doubleheader of races on tap at Belle Isle Park in Detroit on a road course, his first love. A driver who thought he wanted to race internationally and who until Sunday many people thought was from Europe, has become a standard bearer for American drivers. I didn't know what was around the corner from victory lane when I got into the winner's circle, he said Tuesday, as a limousine whisked him to the Empire State Building for a photo with the Borg Warner Trophy, which he won Sunday. It was pretty eye-opening, and it opened me up to a whole barrage of neat experiences I've never known before. He smiled, adding, at the same time, it's very difficult to be doing all this when half your mind is on Detroit. You have a job to do, and you want to carry the momentum forward. To all but Formula One fans, Rossi was practically unknown until he won Sunday's race. Until this year, Rossi had been on the fast track for the series, and as a result, he said, a lot of people don't realize I'm from America, from California, which is a little bit annoying. Rossi drove in 5 Formula One races last year, but was passed over for a full-time ride this year for the team he was on last year. He sought a place to compete every week, said Michael Andretti, his new team car owner, and he knew about Rossi. And of course, Mario Andretti was a legend